Trackhouse fires their competition director. Kyle Busch apologizes to Elliott for their Richmond run-in. And what is this announcement Ram is teasing? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Earlier this summer, I had the amazing opportunity to visit Victory Junction in North Carolina, see how that summer camp is making an incredible difference in so many children's lives. I've also done a series of interviews with counselors, executives, highlighting Victory Junction's incredible mission. Today, former camper Gavin Grubbs joins the show. He'll share some of his story, how his time at Victory Junction not only shaped him personally, but also impacted his professional life. So stay tuned to the end of this episode to hear that great story. But we've got some news to get to before then, beginning, unfortunately, with some sad news out of Charlotte. Former president of Charlotte Motor Speedway, H.A. Humpy Wheeler, passed away this week. A legend of the industry, an entertainer through and through. His promotional efforts are still talked about today. He was an icon of NASCAR's growth period in the 90s and 2000s. Truly one of the most influential, remarkable characters from NASCAR's history. A sad day for the sport of stock car racing. My thoughts go out to Humpy Wheeler's friends and family. Now, looking ahead to this weekend at Daytona International Speedway, several major announcements are scheduled for Saturday afternoon. The NASCAR 25 video game cover art is expected to be revealed. Trackhouse has a press conference scheduled. I believe it was this weekend 1 year ago they officially announced Shane Van Gisbergen to the Cup Series full-time, so I wonder if this is the Connor Zilisch announcement we've all been patiently waiting for. And then Ram has an off-site announcement scheduled as well. According to reporter Joseph Srigley here, the announcement will be at a Ram dealership owned by the father of Kaulig racing driver Daniel Dye. Kaulig to trucks. Kaulig partnering with Ram has been a hot rumor the past few weeks. Curious to see what this announcement is about. It's the details that I'm interested in. If Kaulig is starting a truck series program and is partnering with Ram, how does that impact their relationship with ECR and Chevrolet in both Xfinity and Cup? I've heard there is a good chance their Xfinity program only has one full-time car next year, likely for Christian Eckes. A second car could be solely dependent on funding. But then the Cup side as well. Kaulig Racing is based in Welcome, North Carolina, right next to ECR, RCR, a Chevrolet powerhouse. If Ram and Kaulig are partnering in trucks, we know Dodge, Stellantis are interested in getting into the Cup Series in the coming years. How could this impact Kaulig's relationship with Chevy? Does RCR or ECR fit into this in some way, shape, or form? It's the details I'm interested in. We'll find out what that Ram announcement is here in just a couple of days. Now, I just mentioned Connor Zilisch. Speaking of Zilisch, Junior Motorsports put this statement out today. Connor Zilisch will return behind the wheel of the number 88 Chevy this Friday night at Daytona International Speedway. Parker Kligerman will be on standby if needed. Wow, so Connor Zilisch, less than 2 weeks after breaking his collarbone, back behind the wheel without missing a single Xfinity Series race. Daytona, high banks, high speeds, big crashes, big impacts potentially. I'm happy that Connor must be feeling 100%, and I love how seriously he's taking this Xfinity Series championship fight. He has a 7-point lead in the regular season standings. He doesn't want that to slip away. I love that. I respect that. But, still, I wouldn't have blamed him if he wanted to sit out Daytona. I mean, the kid hurt his back in a crash at Talladega just a few months ago. I wouldn't have blamed him for sitting this week, come back strong, ready to rock at Portland, right in his wheelhouse 1 week later. But I guess credit to Connor Zilisch. We know how quickly he came back from that back injury and went on an 11-race tear. Since that back injury at Dega, Connor Zilisch has made 11 Xfinity starts. He has 5 wins in that span and a ridiculous 2.2 average finish. Insane numbers for any driver, especially an 18, 19-year-old rookie. So that was after an injured back. What is he going to do now after an injured collarbone? Gosh, the field better watch out. Good luck to Connor Zilisch. I hope he has a clean, safe race at Daytona so he's still 100% come playoff time. Let's go back a few nights to Richmond Raceway. Saturday night, roughly halfway through the Cup Series race, a huge crash broke out in turns 3 and 4 just after a restart. Kyle Busch was at the center of it. I hesitate to say he started the crash. He did turn Chase Briscoe, but Briscoe hit the brakes. Larson slammed the door shut on him. It was a stack up, a chain of events. Kyle Busch drives clear of the smoke, but then turns down towards traffic and hooks Chase Elliott hard into the turn 4 wall. Huge impact, not a great look there, but hey, I said at the time, likely an accident. Yes, Kyle Busch did come down the track, but I considered that more of a classic Kyle Busch rage quit. Oh, caught up in another wreck, car is probably killed. It looked to me like he just kind of gave up and lost track of where he was and came down towards traffic. Just zoned out, more or less, which obviously not a good thing. Wish he hadn't done that. That contact with Chase Elliott was avoidable in my opinion, but I don't think Kyle Busch intentionally wrecked or tried to wreck anyone there. And apparently Chase Elliott agrees. He did tell reporter Steven Toronto this week that Kyle Busch reached out to apologize for that incident anyways. Elliott said, quote, "Kyle did reach out to me. He apologized for what happened. I was never mad at him. I knew it was a mistake right when I saw it." Respect to Kyle Busch for reaching out there, for owning up to his mistake. I do kind of like how Kyle has become the elder statesman, a role model of sorts, lead by example now. In his early days, he had a reputation for being an overly aggressive, sometimes dirty, often selfish driver. And we still see moments today where Rowdy pops out again, but broadly speaking, I think Kyle is one of the cleaner, more fair race car drivers in Cup today. He does overstep, make a lot of mistakes, but usually it's just him trying to get the most out of the car, not him trying to race a guy dirty. I'd love to see Kyle Busch have a little more edge, but I think Kyle is very aware of his current situation. You can't be ruffling feathers, banging doors, driving through people when you're running 15th. You know, that's what Carson Hocevar does these days, and nobody in the garage seems to like him. His own teammates even seem to have beef with Carson Hocevar. If you're running up front, racing for the win, a little aggression is socially acceptable. But Kyle Busch, unfortunately, Richard Childress Racing are not usually running up front, are not usually contending for the win. So Kyle, I think, has reined it in. And I think that does show self-awareness. You know, I do want to see Kyle get some edge back, but I don't want to see it when he's running 18th. I want to see Kyle Busch find the speed first. I want to see the performance improve, the execution improve. Stop speeding on pit road. Do that first. Start running top 5 regularly again, and then I want to see some of that classic Kyle Busch edge make its return. I know I'm bouncing around a bit. Back to Trackhouse. We talked about Connor Zilisch earlier. Team Trackhouse is in the news this week already. Tim Packman first reported that Trackhouse has fired their chief operating officer and director of shop floor operations. Tony Lunders, who according to Bob Pockris was also the team's competition director, and Gary Putnam were both released this week. Pockris reports that Todd Meredith, longtime JGR executive who was hired by Trackhouse earlier this summer, will take over that competition director role. The timing of this news, right before the playoffs begin, is interesting. Maybe this lights a fire under everyone. Maybe they find that little something over the next 10 weeks and it can make a serious championship run. Or this sudden turnover could lead to disorganized chaos at the shop. I could see both, but I like the move because, frankly, now is the time to try something. Right now, Trackhouse is not a championship contending team. They're just not. Ross Chastain, in the last 10 races, his best finish is 10th. He has won top 10 in almost 3 months. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen is a tremendous road course racer. If he gets through that first round, he has a real shot at the Roval to make the round of 8. That would be huge, but neither SVG nor Ross Chastain are championship contenders this year. That's just a fact. Making this change now at least could light a spark, and maybe we see a rapid improvement over the next couple of months. This at least gives them, I think, a chance. Yeah, something needed to change. Look at 2024 versus 2025 numbers for Ross Chastain. Look at his average start, much worse this year. His average finish is worse. His laps led, far worse. Compare Daniel Suarez, same numbers. Everything is down across the board. Shane Van Gisbergen winning at road courses has been the only bright spot for this team outside of Ross Chastain's incredible run at the end of the Coca-Cola 600. But that was one race, and SVG, yes, great road course racer, but there's only one of those left on the 2025 schedule. So this change, making it now, not only gives you a chance of figuring something out in time for the playoffs, but it also gives you time to prepare for 2026. Team Trackhouse is in a transformative era. They added a charter this year, Shane Van Gisbergen full-time, Daniel Suarez out, Connor Zilisch likely in next year. I've talked about this, and now Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal, is talking about Trackhouse potentially looking to join a new manufacturer, specifically Honda, perhaps the next couple of years. This is the time to take big swings. Trackhouse over the last few years have built a solid foundation. They've won races every year. Chastain made that incredible playoff run 3 years ago. They've built something special here, but they've also kind of hit a wall. I think we've seen what their ceiling is. So big swings, competition changes, potentially an OEM change in the coming years. Those are the kind of swings that Trackhouse has to take if they're ever going to break into that top tier, if they're ever going to break into that JGR, Hendrick, Penske class consistently. So some may see this as an unnecessary risk to take right before the playoffs, but the way I see it, the status quo wasn't going to get the job done. Might as well take a big swing. If it doesn't work out this fall, hopefully it works out start of 2026. So some big news, some notable changes happening at Trackhouse. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Was it time to make a change? Are you worried about how this could impact the rest of their 2025 season? Let me know down in the comment section below. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Gavin Grubbs, a former Victory Junction camper. Tell some of his stories. He's a big NASCAR fan as well. You'll hear some of that. So with that being said, let's invite Gavin Grubbs onto Out of the Groove. Gavin, it's fantastic to meet you. I've got a few questions to ask. First and foremost, I do know that you are a big Joey Logano fan. More than that, you're good friends with the defending Cup Series champion. How does that come to happen?
Well, it's actually a really funny story on how it first began, because Joey just came off his Rookie of the Year season. I was 8 years old, and when you're an 8-year-old kid, you're trying to find like your favorite sports teams, your favorite athletes. You don't have that identity as a sports fan yet. And I saw that Joey was the youngest winner in the 2009 season. I was like, okay, I'm going to start following this guy. He's going to be my new favorite driver, because at that point, everyone in my family were all Mark Martin fans. I had a Make-A-Wish in 2010, and during my wish interview, when they ask all these questions and go through the process of figuring out what the Make-A-Wish is going to be, one of the questions was, well, who's your favorite NASCAR driver? And we had talked about my first choice for a Make-A-Wish going to the Daytona 500. I said, well, Mark Martin and Joey Logano are my two favorites. And after the interview, they this is what I've heard from the people who were part of granting the wish. And they said, well, we called Mark Martin, and Mark didn't really say no, but he said, if Joey is your other option, he's young, this would be good for his career, he needs to do this. So it's funny, I'm actually got to be friends with Joey Logano because Mark Martin said no. So I just think that that's kind of a funny story, and anytime people have asked about it, I kind of went back and thought about it, and I'm like, oh, that's really an interesting story. But so Joey Logano flew into my hometown when I was 8 years old and surprised me. I got told I was going to speak at my older brother's high school pep rally for their basketball homecoming, and little did I know it was actually a Make-A-Wish wish reveal for me.
Wow.
And so I went to the 2010 Daytona 500 and had a few interactions with Joey there. I guess I was 12, 13 years old. It was the last few years they still allowed off-season testing. And, there's no longer the track is there, but there was the track in Memphis, Tennessee. And Penske would come down there. It was Joey's first 2 years with Penske. They would come in the off-season and test. I got to really start hanging out with everyone at Team Penske, and that's how I got to be really good friends with Joey, actually. And I think it was the second year they had tested, and that's when Joey was like, hey, do you want to be a groomsman in my wedding? And I was like, well, yeah, I want to be a groomsman. And so that was, I guess, 2014. During my Make-A-Wish, it was 2010, Daytona 500. I don't know how many people remember that the weather's pretty unpredictable at Daytona. Sometimes it is very warm, sometimes it's very cold. I remember the whole week in 2010, I don't know if it got over 50 degrees the whole time we were in Daytona. And I remember going to the Speed Channel tent, and they knew that it was my Make-A-Wish, so we were sitting backstage during, I don't know if it was race day or just some of their daytime programming during the week. But we got to talk to Kyle Petty and meet him, and we asked about Victory Junction. We'd heard of it. We didn't know a whole lot about it. And I was like, Well, we can and got to learn a lot more about it. So my first year as a camper was 2010. I went from 2010 to 2016. So I was a camper for
Wow.
6 years, from I was 8 until 14, and then my last year I could or 11 till 15. I think it was 2014 or 15. One year or the other. It was. I remember the race because it was Chase Elliott's first career start. So I think it was 2015 at Martinsville.
I think you're
And
right.
Victory Junction sent a camper to be like a guest reporter and interview a handful of drivers and do kind of media things. And lo and behold, they picked me to go, and I got to go to Martinsville. And I remember I interviewed Joey once, and that was super fun. I interviewed Eric Almirola because he was driving for the Petties at that time, and really got to spend a lot of time with him. I interviewed Austin Dillon. That was my first experience getting to be around NASCAR outside of just Team Penske and Joey, and that was also my first time doing sports media
Yeah.
type things. And I was, I guess, 13 at the time, so it was that opened a huge door for me. And we were at the trying to think. I think Booty Barker was Eric Almirola's crew chief at that time with Richard Petty, and I was talking to him because he also uses a wheelchair. I was talking to him. I was like, I could be a crew chief or engineer. And he said, well, I just watched you do that interview. You're a natural at it, and that's easy money. Go do that. It was just kind of an interesting moment for me as a kid. I don't know if you remember the first time an adult said, "You're on the right track, but here's something that maybe you would be better at." I don't know if you have a moment like that growing up you remember.
I'd have to think about it, but it is important when you have that kind of guidance from a person of authority, someone who's been there, done that, who can kind of point you the right direction. But more than importantly, it's great to identify early something that you naturally are comfortable doing, which it sounds like with the help of Booty Barker and the connections through Victory Junction, you kind of found that, it sounded like.
Yeah, and it's just funny because I mean, me and him were not close at all. I mean, I've had a handful of conversations with him in the over 10 years I've been around NASCAR. I've probably had less than 6 or 7 conversations with Booty, and that was just the one that I remember was at Michigan. I was 13 or 14 years old, and he kind of gave me that little piece of advice as somebody
I
who
love that.
is in a somewhat similar situation to myself and in a wheelchair. And he's done media, he's been a crew chief for a long time, and now he's in, I think, more of a business competition role at 2311 still now. So it was just a really cool moment. Looking back on it, I was like, wow, that was actually like just a small 30-second conversation, but kind of a life-changing conversation.
Can you tell a little bit more about your experience actually camping out at Victory Junction?
And so I remember the first year, or I went, I think it was either 2010 or 2011. I was 8 or 9 years old, so I'm not going to remember all the exact details, but I remember this feeling of just pure excitement. I had been to summer camps before, and I mean, I had a great time. But when you go to something that I've been passionate, borderline obsessed with NASCAR since I was before I can remember. I don't ever remember not loving it. So when I get there as this 8 or 9 year old kid and see all these NASCAR themed buildings, the huge Adams racetrack, the big replica of Adam Petty's car, and I see that, and I just remember this feeling of super excitement. My mom always tells the stories. She kind of tears up a little bit every time we go to camp, and she's not a super like emotional person, but every time we go to camp, she would tear up a little bit, and I would just get so excited. And it was one of those places by the end of the week, I never wanted to leave every year. What's really cool to me, looking back as an adult, is the staff that they have. I mean, these are all college kids, 18 to 23 years old is the majority of their volunteer counselors, and they're doing so much for kids. And I mean, you don't see that out in the world, but in a vacuum, it felt so normal. But then as an adult, you're looking back and you're like, wow, this is a really impactful group of people that choose to do this.
Thank you to Gavin for joining the show. If you'd like to learn more or support Victory Junction, head to victoryjunction.org. Link is down in the description below. Really appreciate y'all watching this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more NASCAR content every day, every week, all year long. The regular season is winding down. Playoffs right around the corner. So much good content to come in the next few weeks and months. Big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. I will see you again tomorrow. Short week. Friday, Saturday night races will do that, I guess. Thanks for watching, y'all.